All right, so welcome everybody to yet another live interview show with Become a Fearless Father. And my guest right now is Christopher McCluskey. Chris, thank you so much for taking time for being on the show. I know how busy you are.
Great to be here, Klaus. This is great, man. Very cool.
Awesome. We already spoke a little bit before, so we already worked on our connection, so it's going to be absolutely popping right now. Before we go into your background story, right, and your whole, your family setup, which we're very interested in knowing how that's. I saw some pictures, man. I'm like, dude, every time I look, I see more kids.
So, I know, there's a gang of them, right?
Right, exactly. So we're going to talk about that, but before we do, man, I think within your coaching is one of the things that's also very important is purpose, right? So I want, before we start, I just want to real quickly dive into that, man. What does purpose mean for you, and the importance, but most importantly, I guess, is how can somebody find their purpose and know, like, okay, this is my purpose in life. Right.
That's as good a place to start as any. I actually have a mantra, a statement that I say to myself frequently as a quick check, because a purpose statement is supposed to be like a point of orientation. Like if you were hiking out in the country and you needed to check your bearings as to where you were. It's your North Star, your purpose. Like, what am I all about? That's what a purpose statement is. And so for me, my purpose statement is a little poetic, but it's simply this: I am the water my family drinks every day. So I use a metaphor of water and thinking about it as being something that they're going to draw from me, whether I am providing good water or not so good water, or a bitter taste to it, or poisonous, or whatever. If it's muddy, whatever I bring to my wife and children every day, that's what they get to drink. So when I think about that, I of course want to be providing for them very good, pure, nourishing, strengthening, refreshing kind of water in myself, my way of being, the way I provide for them, what life is all about, the enjoyment of it. So it's just a very quick point of orientation to check yourself on. It doesn't have tremendous specificity. It's just general orientation real quickly. I am hugely, first and foremost, about my wife and my kids.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I really like that, because it makes you immediately go, okay, yeah, I gotta be the perfect water for my kids, my wife, right? You don't want to poison them, and then we're gonna go a whole different ballgame.
Oh yeah, and I mean, of course, we do sometimes, right? They still have to drink the water if I'm in a bad mood. Yep. If I'm short-tempered, if I'm impatient or distracted or whatever, that's still the water that they've got to drink. And so it's just a quick check for me. I can control a whole lot more than I sometimes want to have to admit if I'll just remember, hey, dude, that's all they're getting. Is that what you want to be getting? Then what you need to do in order to get them something better. It's
exactly.
Just that.
Yeah, which also makes me then click a little bit with what I call the zombie dad, right? The guy that goes to his 9 to 5. Is there more than just a 9 to 5, but is there like 10, 12 hours a day, then the commute, etc. There's no water to drink.
Well, exactly. That sounds like a drought, doesn't it? I mean, they're going, we're parched here. A little water, please. Yeah, and it's like, no, you're misting them because you're not there. That's an example of how the general purpose statement, which is broad, it's not specific, does provide me that point of orientation to check, well, okay, so did the family get many drinks today? Or do I need to knock off now and get to them because they're thirsty? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it plays out in many very practical, specific ways, but it's just a quick point of orientation all the time.
Exactly. Yep. And I love Bruce Lee, so his explanation, his philosophy in regards to water, then also immediately comes to mind. So I love the reference, man. I love it. I might just steal it from you and start reminding myself every day as well. I think it's brilliant. Thanks, man. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. It's a great start of this live interview. Before we continue, Christopher, as I mentioned, share with us your background story and as well the family setup, please.
You bet. Yeah, I've been married 33 years to my dear wife, Rachel. In fact, our anniversary is coming up here in just another week. I've already planned my kidnapping of her. She does know that she's being kidnapped. She just doesn't know where she's being taken away for a few days. But we've been married 33 years. We have 7 children. We have lost a few in pregnancy, but we have 7 that are here that we're raising. Our oldest is 28. She is married, and we have our first grandchild. He's a year old, just actually this week, and our youngest is 12. So about every 3 years, we have a child stair-stepped down there. So we've got them. We just finished up the preteen years with that 12-year-old. Now we're into many of them in the teens and on into the 20s. Got a few of them in college. They're pretty well spread across the lifespan. And we are an extremely entrepreneurial family. I have almost always owned my own businesses. I did work for people for an early part of my career, but by the time I was 29, I had launched a private counseling practice, a psychotherapy practice, and loved that, did that for several years, but realized that that wasn't all that different from working for somebody else. Because with a counseling practice, you have an office somewhere else, you leave in the morning and wave bye-bye at the window as the kids are bleary-eyed looking out at you, go away, and you come home at dinner and you hope dinner's still warm. So a lot of my life still looked pretty conventional in terms of employment, though I was an entrepreneur. And so 22 years ago, I moved into the field of professional grade coaching instead of counseling. Coaching you can, of course, do by telephone at great distance. The internet was brand new back then. And it was at that point when I went full bore into it that we actually moved then even from Tampa Bay, Florida, where we were living, out to the country where I'm speaking to you now. We live on a dirt road in the foothills of the Ozark Mountains in the U.S. That's in the state of Missouri, not very far from St. Louis, Missouri. And 440 acres all around me here that is family farm. Some of my extended family live on other sections of this property, and we just live way off the beaten path, not off the grid, but off the beaten path. And I have worked these 22 years then from home. I'm here on the 3rd floor of the house that we designed and built, and I have clientele, serve people all over the world. We're in more than 40 countries. That's what we're about, is entrepreneurism, and specifically home-based entrepreneurism. Why? For the sake of the family. We've homeschooled our kids. I have been a very present and active part of those kids' lives, all of their lives.
Fantastic, man. I love it. And I forgot something. I apologize. Let me show it real quick. I hope you don't mind. I put this in the comment section already. So this is Christopher's website, right? It's in the comment section again. Everybody can check it out. You can get connected with Chris right there. So that's it. I'm going to leave that up a little bit. My intention was to have this up while you were talking about you.
Okay. That's all right, man.
I was so in focused immediately what you were saying and writing that I completely forgot, man. And then, of course, you are in the group of 4 doing the Entrepreneurial Family.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Some of my dear friends and colleagues, Chris Niemeyer, Jamie Slingerland, and Michael McGreevy. I think you've already interviewed Chris here, and I think you've got those other 2 slated, right?
Jamie, we're talking, but he's really busy, so he's going to be later on. And then the other 2 have been on yet. And Chris, of course, got me connected with all 3. Chris is out of this world, man. For him, I'm going to be shaving for the rest of my life, so I just look like him.
Like Chris Niemeyer, yeah. We 3 connected with each other years ago as part of a mastermind group that we attend. It's a virtual meeting every week, but then about 2 or 3 times a year while we meet for face-to-face in Nashville, in Tennessee, here in the U.S. They're in different states. You know, we don't live near each other, but we connected up there, and our hearts were so similar in our visions for family and marriage and entrepreneurism that we really realized there was just such commonality. The 3 of them initially started this podcast by themselves and asked me to come in as like I guess I'm more the gray fox here. I've got a few more years on those 3 guys. So they asked me to come in originally as like the mentor, like the McCluskey mentor moment. And pretty soon I was the 4th musketeer. I'm just in there with them. But it's called the Entrepreneurial Family Man. And that is the things that we major on, as you know. It's about our marriages. We're crazy about our wives. We love our children. And we want to kill it in business. The reason for all of that is because of those things that matter most to us. So
yeah, exactly. And you can tell, man. I mean, I've listened to several podcast shows of you guys, and it's just, man, there's chemistry there. I love it, and I can't wait for Jamie to book later on. And as you know, I'm trying to get you all together. So
right.
5-man show. That's people cross your fingers, because that's going to be for Become a Fist Fall. It's going to be epic. It's going to be something new. I heard you guys have already done it, but for me, I've never been that far. I think I've reached 2 people at the same time. With myself as 3. So if that would set the bar really high for everybody else. So looking forward to that, man. So I'm just wondering, man, because you mentioned 7 kids. That's crazy. You're a granddad now as well. That's awesome. Let's start off with this. What would you say are some of the keys for your keys to success for marriage?
For marriage, it would be, you talked about purpose and vision. In fact, I'm going to point this out because people are seeing this anyway. Professional Christian Coaching Today is a podcast that I do on a weekly basis, different from the Entrepreneurial Family Man, obviously. And it's connected with my website there that you have. Thank you for posting that up there. That's for an institute where I train people in coaching. Obviously, we're targeting the Christian market. So at that site and with this podcast on a weekly basis, we talk about all kinds of things relative to intentional living. Because coaching is all about growth. It's about intentional growth and purpose, not, say, like counseling, which is about healing because something's broken, something is not the way you want it to be. Coaching is about a vision-driven orientation for growth. So I've actually done several different podcasts, episodes in this on topics of vision for marriage, for family, for life, for career, for health, for finances, you name it. But vision, purpose, mission, and goal setting. Those 4 all by themselves are a rich treasure trove of taking a very coach approach to examining, well, what is it that I value most? What do I believe if I lived more in alignment with that would actually be the fruit of that? What would I see? That's the big vision of my life, the legacy kind of stuff. And then that helps you flesh out that purpose, that raison d'etre, right? That why am I here anyway? What's it all about? That purpose statement, and then specific mission statements that say, well, in this arena, here's my mission. In this arena, here's my mission. And all of these missions, that's your doing. You know, soldier, state your mission. What are you here for? What are you doing? Your doings all should be in alignment with that grander purpose and that big vision for your whole life. That kind of thing takes a lot of time, contemplation, journaling. I would suggest prayer, private retreat times in silence and solitude, listening to great podcasts and videos like this, reading good material to help you get clearer, because nobody else can hand you that. You don't want to just borrow somebody else's vision, purpose, and mission and set of goals for life, but you sure don't want to go through life never having them. So the hard work of developing those and getting them in black and white, not just kind of vague conceptual things, nailing it down in black and white, that's the work of all of this. And I think to the degree that we do it, it serves as a point of orientation. Like, again, if we borrow something from the world of employment, when you get hired by somebody, they take you in and they say, okay, here's your office, there's your desk, here's your chair, there's your window, or sorry, you don't have a window, but they hand you then a manual. They hand you a policies and procedures manual. This is how we do it here. This is your job description. These are the standards by which you're going to be evaluated. You get a promotion, you'll get bonuses, or you'll get fired, right? You get written up. Everything's clearly written out. We need to take responsibility for ourselves as entrepreneurs and as stewards of these lives we've been given to do that same kind of thoughtful analysis. What am I here for? What fruit am I supposed to be working toward? What gauges am I using to measure progress or failure? So it's not an easy work, but it's, I believe, some of the most important work we do as adults. And that said, I don't think many adults do it, but they suffer the consequences, as does their family, for not doing it. Because you're kind of like just flying by the seat of your britches, right?
Exactly. Yeah, what I keep saying to everybody, like what I call the zombie dads, just going through life, not thinking about all these kind of things that are really important, connecting with people, just having that 9 to 5, having to do what everybody else say and hope that you have a window. Which I remember I had not when I was working in Manhattan, for example, for an internship. It was absolutely ridiculous. I think that's a big difference between America and the Netherlands. It was not possible. And when I was working in Spain, it wasn't even possible either. It's like you got a window. And then I came in America and it's like, dude, man, you got a cubicle. What the hell is this? Why is the thing so high? Where are my colleagues at? Why am I all by myself? I don't like this. Get me out. So, yeah, man, I can understand that so many people don't like their jobs, especially if you're locked in like that, man. So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Let me ask you something else, because you mentioned you got 7 kids. How do you make sure that all of them, and to keep going in your metaphor, they get to drink from your water, right?
Yeah, because I've still got the same 24 hours in a day that anybody else has, right? Gotta sleep, gotta make a living. Yeah. Well, and I'd be kidding you if I said, oh, they get just as much as if we had 2 or 3. No, of course not. The math doesn't work on that. So there are things that we do as family, particularly because we've chosen to homeschool them, that aid in that dramatically. Our kids are very, very comfortable across age spans. If you think about how most of us were raised, we were typically age tracked. We went off to public school or parochial school, but wherever you went, most all of your peers were within like 6 to 9 months of your same age. And that was who you hung with. And the kids that were a year or 2 older than you, you kind of like idolized them. Maybe that was good, maybe that wasn't so good, but you thought they were super cool and you wish you could be like them. And the kids that were a few years younger, oftentimes you disregarded them or you even snide toward them and kind of made fun of them. Why? Just because groupthink. We start to act like whoever we're around. Well, when you break those artificial barriers of age tracking and you just spend time around people, not even just within your own family, but our kids are very active in the larger homeschooling community here. They've got probably 120 or so peers. They're across all age spectrums. We don't see any of that, that specificity of, no, talk to me just at my level. I don't want to have to sit here and wait while you talk down to them, or wait a minute, I'm not tracking anymore. You're talking over my head. There's a different pacing that the kids show in their ability to be fully present with people, not just people who are in their little tight niche and who watch the same TV shows they do and follow the same stuff on YouTube and use the same slang and same culture. There's a greater comfort in just kind of being together in life with people. And so I would say that part of the answer is there is a community spirit about the way Rachel and I approach our family and our peers that I find to be largely absent in a lot of present day Western culture. I don't think we do community very well. I think we are, like the U.S. is founded on the Declaration of Independence, right? And I love my country, but there is a spirit of independence that can lead to such autonomy, such isolationism, like you were talking about in literal cubicles, like we've got blinders on us like horses or something and can't see those around, that I don't think we do community very well. And so when we want somebody's attention, we want it all. You're not giving me enough attention. And community feels like, oh no, that's watered down. I don't want that. I don't want to be part of a group. I want everything. I think we can break that artificial mold by choosing again to do family and life differently. And I think it makes us better human beings. Because I think, frankly, an awful lot of the hatred that we see spewed on social media and all is because we get so entrenched in our own group think that when people present alternative ideas or viewpoints on anything, we think we've got to vilify them and attack them or defend our own position instead of just realizing, wow, this is pretty cool. There's a diversity of opinion. We don't do community very well. So part of, I think, making a large family work well is a very communal spirit. I read about people, I was just reading about Cornelius Vanderbilt last night, and he and his wife had 13 kids. And suddenly I'm thinking, hey, 7 don't sound so bad. So, we all get used to whatever we choose. We didn't set out to have 7 kids. We set out to have 2, probably 3 if we had 2 of the same gender, But as we fell in love with parenting and with family and began to think about what would homeschooling be like instead of traditional schooling, and then, wow, what would it be like if I were able to work at home? Suddenly, we were also open to what would a larger family be like. So, some of life, you just feel your way through it based, again, on the things that you find that you value most. You iterate, you grow.
Exactly. I love it, man. So let me ask you this, because in regards to homeschooling, I hear a lot of people saying that. It's like, yeah, but because you're talking about community, of course, community is bigger than just your house. How do you make sure that your kids connect? Because even you said, like, we live on a dirt road, like we live out. How do you make sure that your kids connect? Like, that's the biggest worry I've seen so far in regards to homeschool. How do you make sure that they connect with the outer world and, build up their own community, so to say, as well?
Right. Very important question, because otherwise you'll wind up with stunted kids that are actually kind of awkward and geeky in a bad way, not tech geeks or something, but they're just odd. We call it the S question, socialization. How do your kids socialize? So I think you have to be very intentional about it. And you want to be clear, what do you mean by socializing? Like, I don't want them just with any group of kids doing any number of things. So choosing the kinds of activities that we're in. As I said, we're part of a very large homeschooling community, about 120 or so kids. They have an athletic association here, the Rolla Homeschool Athletic Association. And so all of our kids have been able to play things like soccer and basketball, organized things, the girls in organized volleyball. They compete, they travel, just like you might do in a private or public school setting. We have a very active community theater here. And several of my kids are very artistic, so they love actually the design of the sets, the stages. They do the building, they do the outfits, as well as then the choreography, the dancing, the music. We're huge on musicals. That wouldn't be somebody else's thing, so somebody else would look for something else. But our kids are very active in that. They've probably been in as many as 10 or more large-scale musical productions. These are off-Broadway type productions of, like last year we did Newsies, huge productions and big theatrical, full live orchestra. Hundreds and hundreds of seats in the auditorium. So we get them very active in there. There's a lot of peers there. Two of our kids actually are very good with computers, technology, and programming. So they've become active in a robotics community here. They've now competed 3 years in a row at the regional, took the regional, so went to nationals, took the national, and they've competed on the world competition in robotics, designing things like if you were to go to Mars and have a fully autonomous thing there. They've placed now 3 years at the world competition in robotics, mostly homeschoolers, because they're flexible with their schedule. They can pull an all-nighter together, or they can get together in the middle of the day when most other kids would be in school. But the point is, all of those illustrate a great intentionality on the part of us as parents, Rachel and I, making sure, hey, of course we want the kids to have good socialization toward good ends, not just hanging out, but doing things that can stretch them and grow them. And, oh, by the way, all those activities can be monetized. Those can be things that open a door in the child's awareness to ways they might entrepreneurially make their livings someday. And again, they're learning community, how to get along and work as part of a larger team. They're learning leadership skills and all. So, in a word, intentionality.
Exactly. I like that. How do you make sure within that, I was almost going to say crazy household, but that doesn't sound fair, because I have no idea. But I'm just assuming, my house is crazy. I only got 2 boys. So how do you make sure that you get the time, and what do you do in regards to self-development?
Well, some of it is working on a schedule. Now, we're not like running a military camp here, but certainly the more people involved in anything, whether it's a business venture or a community event or a family, the more you need to have some standards and rules, some principles that everybody follows and pretty much walks in alignment with, so that you don't get just chaos reigning, because that's not good for anybody. Nobody enjoys that, and that's not ultimately good. So, regular times of getting up in the morning and routine, family devotions for us in the morning, because we're a Christian family, we're looking to instill in them a faith and a worldview. And so there's time together, again, across the age span around that kind of thing. At noontime, for years, I did a gathering when all of our kids still lived at home around the family dining room table. And that was where we talked about entrepreneurism. And I would share with them current events and talk with them about how you could think about that as a business person. So the little ones weren't tracking as much. The older ones were, and were loving it. And they do due diligence analyses and look at the numbers on things. But all of it was with whiteboard and just around the family dinner table at lunchtime. Now that the kids are older and several have launched off, we still do that, but we do it via Zoom. So we connect at distance. They're in various states even, and we'll phone in and connect and have meetings like that. Evening time activities with whatever's going on in their sporting or their other kind of events, of course, we coordinate those. We got lots of cars, got to have people going in different directions for some of that kind of stuff. That gets a little steep on the pocketbook. But again, intentionality and planning, that's going to serve you well. And to the degree that you recognize something isn't working, probably the main thing you need to say is, we need a better plan. The plan we're currently operating on isn't clear enough. It's not working. Or we've got the plan, but we're not working the plan. Maybe it's a great concept, but it's not being implemented. Yeah.
Exactly. You talk a lot about, so in several of the answers, like, the sports, the kids are doing sports. It might be a silly question that comes up in my head, but I want to ask you anyway, Matt, what kind of cheerleader are you for your kids when you go to the sports games?
Well, I'm not a crazy dad. I have helped out in some of the things with like assistant coach. I'm not a particularly athletic individual. I can play sports. I don't embarrass myself, but it's not like my passion. I would say, for example, I'm more involved in the entrepreneurial thing. We actually now own a series of buildings in town that we have set up as a small business incubator. So in terms of me being more of a coach or a leader, teacher, facilitating workshops, that's more where I shine. But I've been active, always taking the kids to and from the things. That's great windshield time to talk with them as they play their sports. What do you want to do to get your head in the game? What do you think you could have done better there in that game? What happened to the team? They kind of fell apart. Being with them in the car, being with them on the sidelines, or at least in the stands. I'm an active sports dad or again, whatever the event is. In the musicals, believe it or not, I'm up there on the stage. I'm in costume doing something. And just because, where else would I want to be, right? These are my kids. I love them. I want to do life with them. And they love, it's not an embarrassment to have dad or mom there. They love having us there. Their peers are all part of this business entrepreneurial incubator thing that we have going. That's why we started it. They said, Dad, we want our peers to catch the entrepreneurial vision that you've instilled in us. They're only thinking employment. They're mostly just looking to, like, where can I get a job? Oh, well, that's going to take me to Colorado or California or something. I guess that's where I've got to go. Wait. Is that your vision? No, that's just where the job is. Then you're a career nomad. Don't just go where that pasture is. Get a vision and figure out how you can make it happen entrepreneurially. So this whole small business incubator thing has flowed out of that. The kids who have very active, involved parents, not helicopter parents, but parents that are all about just giving them opportunities and pouring into them, they love having those parents around. I think most parents operate on a default vision that says, wait until the teenage years. I can't wait till they launch 18 years old and they're out. I'm like, really? Is that your vision? That stinks. That is a stupid vision. You've borrowed that from the culture. Don't settle for that. Get a cool, exciting vision. It can change everything.
Exactly. I must say, I was guilty of that in the beginning. It's like, dude, if only my kid would start talking, then then we can really start. Yeah. And I did that with my oldest one. My youngest one was definitely different. I had to learn. So, and then I was like, man, it's not. He doesn't have to talk. I can cuddle with him and hug him. I can talk to him and just share stuff with him and connect and smile. And so, but it takes sometimes a little bit to finally.
Hey, I'll give you a ton of grace on that one because I was the same way. And I'm not sure, particularly, maybe it's more so for dads than moms. We don't have as strong of a nurture gland in most of us as our wives do, to just cuddle and hug on them and love them and bathe them and brush their hairs. I do all that. I did all that when they were that age. But I couldn't wait until they could sit down and have a decent kind of conversation with me. When my son Colin was 5 years old, we started a little business on the side just so I could have something that could generate a little bit of extra side income, and I could do it with him. It was simple. It was almost brainless, but that meant he could do it as a 5-year-old. It was called Daddy's Snacks. And we went around selling high quality nuts and like cashews and honey roasted peanuts and that kind of stuff, licorices, beef jerkies. And so he could come in with me. He could hold them in his little chubby hand and ask people if they'd be willing to sell our snacks at their mom and pop shop or cafe or gas station or whatever we had. And he learned to rotate stock, put the new stuff in the back and the old and count them up. And so yeah, it's definitely, my friend, it's more fun when they can have a real conversation with you. We'd go out and have our little hamburger and shake and fries, and we'd talk business level at a 5-year-old. I know that's a lot of why now at 25 years of age, why he is so in love with entrepreneurism and impacting the culture and the community and all this, because we got to have those kinds of, conversations.
Yep. Yeah, we need those kind of people.
Yeah, right?
We definitely need them. So let me ask you, because it's something that I'm thinking about, right? I got a 3-year-old, 6-year-old, and I'm already thinking like, look, I want them to grasp what it means to be an entrepreneur. I want them to know. And here's where I noticed that we make a lot of mistakes, especially in school. We don't ask our kids, what do you want to be now? We ask our kids, what do you want to be in the future, right?
Yes.
When you're grown up, if we ever grow up, but let's say, there's an age
wherever that magical time is, yeah.
Right? And I'm really trying to instill this, like, okay, what do you want to do now? How did you, besides, taking those things, how did you go about, what were some of the projects, things that you did intentionally? Because that's what I've noticed from you, like it's really intentional to focus them on being creative, being an entrepreneur. But how does that look like? How did that look like with your kids, or how does that still look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as a father, as a parent, mother or father, I think it's a terribly important piece of our approach to parenting. So I'll share from my worldview, which obviously is very much shaped by the faith that I hold, but I certainly believe that we are created beings. I'm not one who just believes that we kind of evolved from whatever previous life form. So believing that we were created with an intentional plan for our lives, I turn to scriptures, and one of the scriptures I lean into heavily on this question is that the gifts and the call of the Lord are irrevocable. To revoke something means to take it back. But if I accept that notion as a parent, that there are certain giftings and callings that have been placed by a creator into this child that I now hold in my hands, or that I'm walking along and doing life with, or that I'm having a conversation with at 5 or 6 years old, like your oldest, as a parent, then I'm listening to hear, what are those gifts? What is that calling? Because if it's in there and it's irrevocable, it's not going to go away. But that doesn't tell me that I'm going to discern it. It doesn't even tell me, if I do discern it, that they're going to do anything with it, right? It just says, if you think of it like software, there was software that was loaded into this device at the factory, but you didn't get a manual. You don't know what the software is. You don't know what it does. But you're going to spend a lot of time very intentionally trying to figure out what's in there. What's it to do? How does it work? So as a parent, when I'm listening with that kind of expectation, it's a very exciting discovery process. And the more that, with 7 kids, you can imagine, we got a really wide range of personalities and expressions, artistic all the way to the very scientific and mathematical, everything on the spectrum, because every one of them came loaded with software from the factory, and it's unique. And so as parents, we spend a great deal of time helping the children through questions to discover, to explore, to experiment, express. And when we see that they hit on something, we go, there looks like a real bent toward that. They've got a natural proclivity toward that thing. Let's give them more opportunities there. Not because we're trying to push them in that direction, but rather because we're seeing indications, and we want to, if they need memberships, if they need lessons, if they need tools, computers, groups, whatever, why, that's where we spend a lot of our money and our time, is in the whole larger process of helping them to discover more of how they are naturally bent. Mm-hmm. Because if they can find that and they can start to sing that song that was kind of written into them, by the time they get to their teenage years, guess what? That'll start to be monetized. That'll start to become something that, my goodness, anything could make money. So if they're singing the song of their heart and they've learned, golly, this isn't even like work. Like, I'd do this if I didn't get paid for it at all, but I can get paid for it? How cool is that? So by the time they start to look at things in their grown-up years, they have a much fuller sense of who they are and how they're hardwired. And their career decisions then make a whole lot more sense. They're in alignment with the gifts and the call.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, because if I think about me, or if I look at kids now, it's like, they go through that mainstream of, you go to school, and then you go to high school, then you go to college, university, whatever it is, right? And then you find that job, and it's just like, and that's what's being fed.
Like Pink Floyd's The Wall, right? We don't need teaching. Yeah, just drones. Like, everybody's going to go the same path. You've got to all take the same test. You've got to all sit still and do the same things. It trains us. I don't think it educates us. Mm-hmm. It oftentimes doesn't free us. It confines us. We do really well in the workforce. If that's what's important, okay, I guess we'll be good employees. But it doesn't call us out to fullness of being.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's why for me, now being 41, and not discovering my true purpose until I was 39, it's like, yeah, I don't want that for my kids. Yeah. So that's what the question came from. I think it's very important to figure that out, to find it out, and to help my kids with that. I heard a lot of Dadpreneurs that I've had on the show say so far, like, find out that passion and just keep pouring gasoline on it. Even if it's not your thing, just keep pouring that gasoline on it and just make it just a huge flame. But that's why I find it so important. That's why I really want to talk to you about this. It's like, every single time you hear the question, it's like, what do you want to be when you're old? And it's like, what kind of thought is that going to put in my kid's head? It's like, okay, so I got to think already what I want to be when I'm 18. So what are we talking about? Fireman, or I'm going to be a doctor or an accountant? It's like, no, what do you want to be now, right? I want my kids to be inspirational for their fellow classmates and their peers, right?
Right.
Now, not when they're 18, 19, 20, out the house or whatever it is. They got to be it now, right? So I'm trying to really think of a way of being intentional and teaching them that. And as you mentioned,
it's then more a matter of how do you want to express who you are, not who do you want to be. You are that. How do you want it expressed in the world? It's already in there. And I think oftentimes our attempts at being something are like an outside in kind of a thing. Like, we're trying it on like a set of clothing or something. And no, I don't like that role. I don't like that job. I'll hang that up in the closet and try a different one. Whereas our best expressions are, again, attending to that stuff that's already in there and just figuring out what's it look like, what could it look like out in the big wide world. It's much more of an inside out process than an outside in. I want to be who I am. So I want to discover who I am in my childhood, and I want to express it more and more in my teenage years until by the time I'm a young adult, it's already getting expression and making money. I mean, some of my kids have been running amazing businesses since they were 13, 14, 15 years old. I'm talking amazing businesses. My 20-year-old just invested in his first quadplex. He's purchased a big piece of real estate that he's going to be renting out as he rehabs the thing. But he's doing that with money he started making when he was 13 years old, doing graphics design. Taught himself how to do what is the, it's not PowerPoint, what's the, Photoshop. Taught himself how to do Photoshop and started designing little graphics and logos for his peers, for his buddies, just for fun. He was modifying Nerf guns to make them fire farther and paint them goofy colors and that kind of stuff. And so he started making little logos for that. And it got discovered on the internet such that he started getting hired by companies to design their company logos. He's done full booth displays for conventions and stuff. They had no idea he was a kid. It didn't matter if the product they're turning out is good. We just figured out how to do the monetary exchange across different countries with their finances. But he's using that money to invest in this. I've got a 22-year-old daughter who has her first book coming out with a major publishing house. And it's a book that she has written, obviously, because she's more artistic and creative. It's been endorsed already by a major New York Times bestseller, one of the biggest, well, Andy Andrews, one of the biggest New York Times bestsellers in the world right now. The Traveler's Gift and what's his other bit? The Noticer. It's got huge endorsement. She's 22. What's with that? What's with that is Grace is being who Grace has always been, was discovered to be, and she was encouraged to take classes and to learn how to hone her craft of writing or music, composition, art. She's sold some of her art pieces already. She has a series of cards that she designs and sells, greeting cards and all. But I can remember Grace sitting as about a 15, 16-year-old around that family dinner table when we were talking about entrepreneurial things, and her saying in a very dejected fashion, I just don't think I'm ever going to come up with anything because I can't think business like you older kids do. So she was pointing to her peers, and two of my older boys are very much more mathematical, and they were looking at online internet kind of based stuff. And she was falsely thinking, well, that's the only avenue toward me being able to make money. And I said, whoa, sweetie, no, wait a minute. Remember all the things we're encouraging you to do? You just keep doing those. You'll discover what your path is going to be. And there's ways to monetize that. So here we are 7 years later, 6 years later, whatever it is. And she's got this book coming out because of staying with that notion of who they're going to be is who they already are, just in nascent form. Keep calling it out. Keep helping them figure out what it is, what makes their heart come alive. You can monetize that any number of ways.
Exactly. Yeah, the hard part that I found in that is that we sometimes, with what we've taught, our limited beliefs or our thoughts about how things should be, that's what you project onto your kids as well, right? And as you know, as you mentioned before, you got 7, so it's like you can't do that because all 7, they're all different, right? All 7 are different, and then you are different as well. So
Right.
How do you make sure you check yourself and stay in a open-minded phase where actually you kind of learn from your kids and just pour on that instead of, I wouldn't say teaching, what you said earlier, like training them what your beliefs are?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And that was very insightful because, yeah, you don't want to just be training or pushing our stuff on them. And yet, undeniably, we come to the table, the metaphorical table, with a whole lot more awareness of the world and what it takes to make a living and all than what the child does. How do you keep that from becoming an unintentional but very definite goad, like something that's just pushing them in a direction that when they're 25, they're going to go, I don't even know why I pursued this career. I don't want to do this. My dad always wanted me to do this. Well, part of the answer is I think you're aware of the need to not do that. Secondly, you give yourself a lot of grace because you're going to do that. You're going to screw up. And you need to allow that the way we learn anything is through mistakes. If you won't allow yourself to mess up as a parent, if we put some kind of a overperforming anxiety on ourselves, our kids are going to catch that. And this whole process of growing up and discovering self is not going to feel fun. It's going to feel like a lab experiment or something. I don't know. It's just going to have a really yucky element to it. And you can tell I'm a pretty fun guy. I'm adventurous. On the Enneagram, I'm a 7. So I'm definitely a risk taker and an adventurer, explorer. But whatever your personality is, you want to be sure that you bring a spirit of adventure and discovery to everything. I play off of two words that are very similar. So a little bit of word play here in myself. When I'm interacting with my kids, I can check myself real quickly. Am I explaining right now, or am I exploring right now? And you can just juxtapose those two things, because there are two different ways we can interact with our kids. But to the degree that as their dad, I'm helping them explore, they're having fun, I'm having fun, we're in discovery mode, we're in learner mode, and all kinds of cool things are probably going to happen. When I'm in explaining mode, it better be because I need to be explaining something. Sometimes I have to teach, absolutely. I'm explaining things right now. So there's a place where it's not that you never do it, but if the child is wanting, through their questions, to explore, and I find myself beginning to respond in an explaining manner, that's when I want to go, whoops, wait a minute, sorry. I'm giving you some bad tasting water right there. I'm unintentionally, but very definitely forcing my opinion, my views on you. So let me just shift gears again. And I don't have to say that out loud, but I do it inside to realize, oops, Dad, good idea there, but you're off track.
Yeah, I like that. Exploring, and then you make it fun.
There is a scene in a movie from years ago. It's Steve Martin in the movie Parenthood. I don't know if you've seen. In Parenthood, he's got a kid who's probably 10-ish or so, and the kid's got a lot of anxiety. He's just a really anxious, uptight kid, as is Steve Martin as the dad. Steve Martin plays a great uptight dad. And he's outside, they're looking through garbage cans for the kid's retainer. He lost his retainer, taking it out at Chuck E. Cheese for a birthday party. He threw it away in the garbage. So they're going through the garbage trying to find this thing. And Steve Martin's just grossed out by it. And the kid had gotten so anxious and upset about losing it that he was screaming in the party. And so the dad's embarrassed. He's like, man, what's wrong with my kid? He's a nervous wreck. So he's out there obsessively washing his hands, and he's griping at his wife going, where the heck does he get all this anxiety from? And she's looking at him. She goes, I can't imagine, honey. Our kids will pick up a ton from us by the cues that we give them in our way of being with them. They will become more anxious if they pick up that we're really anxious. I don't want to blow it as a dad. I don't want to be a bad. I don't want my kid to grow up to be a loser. And we put that on them, and they start to inhabit that space. Just assume there are gifts and I don't care what your religious background is, assume there are gifts and calls within that child that are waiting to be discovered. Go on a big adventurous exploration journey of life with them to call forth, and give lots of room for mess, for messing up and mistakes. And it's only a failure if you refuse to correct it. Learn from it, iterate, keep growing. Parenting becomes, not always, but often it's like the ultimate adventure. The most amazing thing to be entrusted to raise a new life. I want to have fun on that adventure.
Yeah, I got to join you with that one. Man, you mentioned mistakes, and I also asked in the previous interview, because it's one of the things that I'm struggling with at the moment. My son is so afraid of making mistakes. If he makes mistakes, he goes off. And I know I'm the example, but looking at myself, I think I have no idea where it comes from, because I make tons of mistakes and I'm actually kind of cool with it. But of course they go to school, so they also have it from there, right? Or something, I don't know. So I'm kind of struggling, like, how do I deal with this to make him understand that, look, dude, it's you got to make mistakes. Making mistakes is fun, or it should be. But then again, am I putting my view on what making mistakes is, or has somebody else put their view on it? So, yeah, man, you see my dilemma?
Well, I do. Yeah, I would first of all say no. There's no mistake about the importance of making mistakes. We have to. I don't know that I would say that it's fun. I don't like making mistakes. I don't like falling flat on my face. But you're doing the right thing by you have a mindset that says this is necessary. It's inherent. If the child is going to explore and discover and express and be, instead of learning to just walk in lockstep and do what everybody else wants them to do. Again, Pink Floyd The Wall, right? You know, if that's not the outcome that I want, if I want this open exploratory expression and my kid seems to have a natural bent toward being more anxious, then I'm just going to try to help them all the more in unlearning that natural response and seeing instead, no, sweetie, remember, this is part of it. This is the only way we do grow, is that we leave lots of room for mistakes. So the mistake just shows you that's not the way to do something and there's some other way to do it. Let's just dust off and move on again. It's never a failure unless you refuse to correct it. So over time, that message rehearsed in your interactions with them as loving dad, also affirming them and tousling their hair or wrapping them up in your arms, you know, that physical touch, that you're with them and you're affirming the back scratch and the hand hold and all, that they know, wait a minute, it's cool. I'm beating myself up, but dad's not beating me up. Dad's not criticizing. Dad's not making fun of me like my peers do at school or whatever. Dad's not like my coach that's yelling at me and cussing me or whatever. If they get that experience, they will ingest that message over time. I don't think any of us ever comes to the point where we actually like making a mistake. But if we can incorporate it into as an inherent part of growing, then it doesn't bother us very much.
Absolutely true. And you mentioned something important, at least that clicked with me, is like, dude, just be patient, right? It's not that he makes mistakes, he gets into his fit, and then me talking to him immediately it's what you said, like it's going to be being repetitive and making sure that he gets it when he gets it.
Boy, you said it too, never giving up. The perseverance piece, you know, this podcast of mine, one of the themes that we've done 2 or 3 episodes on is that nothing makes up for perseverance. Just continuing to get up one more time and go on. Michael Jordan has a great video that people pass around on YouTube quite a bit of the number of shots he's missed. You know, he's missed a colossal number of shots, and yet he was a phenomenal ball player. Why? Because he was willing to, he missed the game-winning shots at times, but he also made the game-winning shots, just continuing to allow for, quote, failure, mistakes, in the interest of growing and fully expressing. Steve Jobs with Apple always used to say to his people, fail fast and fail often. Get in there and break things, but get in there. Do something. It's not that you set out to fail. You just allow that it's going to happen, and it's never a failure unless you refuse to correct it. So learn from it. Do it fast. Do it often. It's an inherent part of getting better. I don't think most traditional school approaches, and probably not most parents, are very friendly toward the idea of making mistakes. So there's not much grace. There's not much wiggle room for messing up. Peers are often merciless in ridiculing us for making them. And so we learn pretty early on, I don't want to make many mistakes. And what that creates is nothing. A robot, a frozen doer, but not a creative.
Exactly.
I remember a quote from, it's not Van Gogh, who was it? The artist that had the great handlebar mustache, made such amazingly cool impressionistic art. Why am I blanking on his name?
Yeah, art is not my forte.
Oh, but you would know him immediately. Everybody does. He was one of those really wild, eccentric artists. Anyway, the saying that he was raised with by his mother was epitomized by him saying, if my mother was raising me to be a priest, she would say, you're going to be the Pope someday. If she was raising me to be a politician, she would say, you're going to be the president someday. Okay. And she was raising him instead because he was an artist to be an artist. And he became, I'm wishing that I'm going to think of his name when we're done with this live podcast, but he became that person because he was always being called out to a full expression of who he was, mistakes and all.
For who he is. Gotta write that down.
Salvador Dali. There it is. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Salvador Dali. Dali, he just said, and I was raised to be an artist, so I became Dali. We
Mm-hmm.
know his name, but he's like, no, it's just me. I'm just me fully alive. Whatever I was going to be, it was going to be fully alive. That's the people that's the Steve Jobs of the world. They just become fully who they were created and called to be.
Exactly.
That's what we do as parents. We call them out to that.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Just figure it out. Yeah. At first, be really aware, pay attention, find out, what they want, and then just pour gasoline on it. And one of the ways to do that is by just keep saying it.
Yep.
Right.
And give them opportunities, experiences, memberships, lessons, equipment, whatever they need. Yeah. Just let them experiment, let them break things, let them make mistakes. And there's no ridicule. There's just, wow, that's cool. What else could we try? And keep them in it. Yep.
Love it. We got less than 5 minutes. So let me ask you one last, I hope simple question, but what would be like the biggest tip that you can give with all the experience that you have to all dadpreneurs out there?
That is a big question, but the word that comes immediately is time. That is our fixed, finite thing, and when it's gone, it's gone. We only get these kids for about 18 years or so. It's been shown that in the whole span of their lives, 80% of the time that we will ever have with them was spent during those first 18 years. Only 20% over all the rest of their adulthood will we ever have any kind of actual interaction with our kids. So you got that window, and I'm telling you what, it closes fast. Mm-hmm. It closes fast. So examining the time that you have and saying, there's no time like the present. If I've gotten a conviction, if I've got a twinge, if I've got a peak in my heart about something, I better figure out how to act on that, and now, because the time's going to fly by. I told you 22 years ago we moved to this dirt road, closed down the practice, and made these huge shifts in home business and in homeschooling. Examine the time that you have and recognize how short and valuable it is, and figure out what you're going to do to capitalize upon it so that you have as reasonably much time with the kids as you can.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. Man, I got tons of questions still. I got actually more questions than when I started with my topic.
That's a good thing, I guess.
But that's great. However, I want to take more of your time than an hour, and I'm sure other dadpreneurs that have been watching and listening, etc., they got questions. Chris, besides, let me show it right away. This time right here. Besides your website, right? What are the best ways to get in contact with you, to follow you, maybe connect with you?
You bet. Yeah, the best way to get a steady drip download of me and these perspectives would be either this podcast here, which if you go to that website you've got up there, professionalchristiancoaching.com, up on the masthead, it just says podcast. Click on it. It'll take you to the podcast website. Every week for more than 4 years, we've been cranking out weekly podcasts on an intentional approach to life. Now, it's about the field of coaching, but it's anything in life. Coaching is all about intentional living. So following that podcast, and of course, you've already mentioned the Entrepreneurial Family Man podcast. Both of those, subscribing, you can get us in your head, and it'll get in your heart and spirit. Of course, we're on Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook, Christopher McCluskey. So I know you're on there, Klaas. We can put that link into the show notes if you want to. But
absolutely, I will definitely do that.
Podcasting, definitely the best. And then the institute that I train. Anybody that wants training, great. They're on the website. Tons of info.
Fantastic. Yeah, so everybody that's been watching, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you. As I said, the link that you can see is a link in the comment section. You just click on it. For those people that have listened to the podcast or have listened to this on YouTube, which is replay, you can find all these links in the description and click on that and connect with Christopher. I highly recommend it. I've connected with him before we did this live interview. Loved it. He's an amazing man, and he's got some great insights to share with you, besides just having a fantastic chat, right? So, Christopher, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to have all four of you on. That's for sure.
We'll do that. Yeah, and it's an absolute pleasure, Klaas. Hats off to you for doing what you're doing with this Become a Fearless Father. It's huge. Good for you.
I appreciate you mentioning that. Everybody else, have a fantastic day. I will see you guys very soon, and we'll talk then. Take care. Bye-bye.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out. You got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.